Good morning. I'd like to share A Place We Are Creating by John Shar. The future is not some place we're going, but one we're creating. The paths are not to be found, but made. And the activity of making them changes both the maker and the destination. And now I'd like to enjoy together with you a video brought to you by Justin Harms, Renee Brown, and the UUFM Choir.
Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Open your ears to the song. Open your ears to the song. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Open your hearts, everyone. Open your hearts, everyone. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Don't be afraid of some change. Don't be afraid of some change. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in.
So we'll now do the chalice lighting. Out of the flames of fear, we rise with the courage of our deepest convictions. Out of the flames of doubt, we rise to embrace the mystery, wonder, and awe. Out of the flames of hate, we rise with the force of love. May the flame of the chalice symbolize our attempts to liberate ourselves and those of our comrades. For it is only when we are all free that any of us are free.
Good morning and happy Mother's Day. Now is the time to wish one another good morning and wish one another a good day. Whoever you find in the breakout room with you is a member of your religious community. We're going to take 5 minutes in breakout rooms and find some connection with the people you encounter. Be sure to share the time and make sure everyone gets a chance to talk and listen. So Jessica will send us into breakout rooms now.
Well, now I would like to invite Sylvia Beeman to join us to read The Story for All Ages. And it is a story of transformation.
The Stream and the Desert. Long, long ago, Stream was born from the highest mountains, laughing and sparkling into the sun. Dancing and twirling, Stream flowed downhill. Sometimes Stream loitered in a pool of coolness, but nothing could impede her driven course. All creatures, plant and animal, adored Stream and kissed her with their lips and roots. Her strength and determination only increased as she adventured through varied lands. But then Stream met desert. No matter how rapidly Stream flowed, her liquid self could not move beyond the unquenchable thirst of desert. Desert, you keep me from my destiny, gurgled Stream in despair. Wind can cross my dusty vastness, so can you, whispered Desert. But I cannot fly like wind. I cannot be anything except me, myself. You steal my flowing garments when you swallow all of me, moaned Stream. New obstacles can be dissolved by expanding the concept of yourself and accepting the help of others, Desert replied dryly. Did you not know that part of you flows through the mud and sludge beneath all of Earth's coverings, even my sands, propelled by gravity's force? Expand beyond your sparkling surface and trust the mystery. If I give myself to the wind, will I still be me? Worried Stream. You will plumb the depths of who you are and experience all the possible forms of your substance. These ideas rippled through the deepest pool of Stream's ancient memories. Stream cast aside her worries and released herself into the cradling arms of wind. Transformed to vapor, Stream wafted gently across Desert's expanse. Then, colliding with a tilted plateau, her vaporous self condensed into rivulets that rejoined her watery essence, flowing unseen atop the limestone slab of Desert's basement floor. Yes, of course, burbled Stream. Now I understand better who I am. Thanks for listening.
Hi, I'm Larry Weaver, and I think it's time for me to give a testimonial, Les.
Yes, time for Larry to give us his testimonial.
Well, hi there. I'm Larry Weaver. I'm a longtime member of the fellowship. I support the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Manhattan in just a few ways now. I used to be very involved with the religious education program, and gosh, I have wonderful memories of those years. That was a big commitment, but I loved it. Now I sing in the choir when we again have one. I volunteer at Happy Kitchen when it reopens. I give money to the fellowship. Most important is that I usually show up. That showing up, simply being here, being part of the group, that is what keeps us alive as a fellowship. But why do I bother? Why do I support UUFM? First, UUFM offers me inspiration on Sunday mornings. Jonalu's sermons are thought-provoking, to say the least. That inspiration is important because there are a lot of negative forces at work in our country and in the world. But also, I am inspired by the young parents who bring their children on Sunday, when we can do that again. Those children are my assurance that the world will go on. They are like the flowers in spring that let us feel the world is coming alive again. Thank you, parents. Next, I'm inspired by the examples set by so many people in this congregation. You folks out there include people who sew face masks, who organize for peace and justice, who live independently when that's hard, who take care of kids, who teach kids, who organize support for the crisis center and emergency shelter. You do so much. I want to be you. I'm inspired to do stuff too. Finally, it's important that Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Manhattan continue to be available as a religious home for people like us who are not in the traditional religious mold. We are a home for humanists and pagans, for theists and agnostics. We foster a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. I sometimes go to mainline churches and sometimes to some not so mainline ones. When I'm there, I participate. I say the creeds, pray the prayers. Then I come here. Oh, the relief, the joy to not say, I believe, when I don't. I want this option to continue to be available in Manhattan. That is why I support the fellowship with my presence and with my money. Thank you.
This religious community exists by its mission, as a fire exists by burning. But a fire cannot burn without fuel. And it is the time, the energy, the imagination, the vision, the creativity, the compassion, the love, and the financial support of the members and friends of this community that fuels our mission to nurture and sustain a welcoming, inclusive, and diverse liberal religious community that transforms the lives and serves the world. Your support, the free and generous support of each and every member and friend of this community, is what fuels this community and its mission. And without your support, the flame of justice, community, and love cannot burn brightly to warm ourselves and be a beacon in the world threatened by division and fear. Our Helping Hands recipient this month is the Boys and Girls Club of Manhattan. Please also don't forget to provide your joys and concerns through the chat feature to everyone or to Jonalu. And because we may post a recording of this service in an archive or on YouTube, for those who aren't available or able to be here today, please indicate do not read out loud if you don't want your joys and concerns to be read outside the chat. And now for our offertory, over to you, Renee.
This morning, before I offer our personal joys and concerns that we bring to this space, let's remember a general one. On this occasion of Mother's Day, the feelings swirl even more widely and deeply than usual. Many of us are accustomed to gathering as family this day each year, congratulating mom and loving on kids and grandkids. And this year may be different. Some of us still will have that opportunity to connect in family spaces. Others are connecting on Zoom or by phone. Some will still be grieving or treasuring the memory of their mother no longer living. Others will have whatever complex of feelings they have, the pain of infertility, the sting of abandonment, pride of their children or of their parents, contentment or bitterness with their stage and circumstance of life. And this year, many people used to gathering with mom, and many moms used to gathering with their children and grandchildren are unable to, and in that is sadness. So we come to this time this morning with a swirl of emotions. We acknowledge them all. We offer gratitude for mothers of all kinds and descriptions and treasure all the family relations that endure while grieving those that are lost for whatever reason. In this complexity of life, we dwell. I'll share something from Sybil. She says she recently saw Joy, a joke I saw recently that said, and poof, just like that, our minister became a televangelist. So just like that, I'm a televangelist. We're so glad to have everybody's here and to have everybody bring what's in their hearts and minds, their joys, their sorrows. And it is in this complexity of life that we dwell. And Les is going to share with us about liminal space.
Thank you, Jonalu. Let's see, just a second here. So, sorry. Liminal spaces. I want to talk about liminal spaces. In talking about liminal spaces, I should define what liminal is, because that's not a word that a lot of us have heard before. So I looked it up on Google, and Google Dictionary, as of yesterday, gave the following definition. The adjective liminal, one, it's relating to a transitional or initial stage of a process. And two, it's occupying a position at or on both sides of a boundary or threshold. There's also another related word that I found that is really evocative and helpful in thinking about this, and that's liminality. So what does that mean? And so I went to Wikipedia, and as of yesterday, this is what it said. Liminality. It says, in anthropology, liminality, from the Latin word limen, meaning a threshold, is the quality of ambiguity or disorientation that occurs in the middle stage of a rite of passage when participants no longer hold their pre-ritual status, but have not yet begun the transition to the status they will hold when the rite is complete. During a rite's liminal stage, participants stand at the threshold between their previous way of structuring their identity, time, or community, and a new way, which completing the rite establishes. So then coming back to what I want to talk about is a liminal space. So what does that mean? And I'll just give my own definition for that. And what I would say is it's an ambiguous space or a location, and it is a space that is neither this nor that, is neither only this nor that, and it's not only here or there, but something in between. And I would also say it's a transitional time, and space. So oftentimes when I'm out in the world, I get the feeling that I'm in one of those spaces. And when I have the opportunity at that time, I'll take pictures of those spaces in order to convey that sense of liminality that I sense. And so here I want to show you some pictures. I want to share some pictures I took when I was in Japan, and where I found what for me were some really interesting liminal spaces. And maybe in looking at these pictures, it will remind you of some liminal spaces that you've been in. So let me show you some of these pictures. So this is very clearly a path going through a bamboo grove, which is next to a Buddhist temple. But interestingly, right in the middle of the path, as you enter it, there's a bamboo blocking your way. So you have to go around it. You have to go between the bamboo. And if you look just off to the side, there are other bamboo that have spaces between them. And so this is but one of many possible paths, an infinite number of different paths that you could take through this bamboo grove. And so I think that this is a very liminal space. So this is at a very famous Shinto shrine. And here we also see a path. And the path is going through a gate and another gate and another and another and another. In fact, these gates go on. There are about 1,000 of these gates going along this path. And normally, when you go to a Shinto shrine, there is a gate, such as one of these, at the entrance. And the Shinto shrine itself is a place where nature deities are believed to dwell. But here, we're just going through gate after gate after gate after gate after gate. So we're always going through this liminal state. And a lot of people take pictures when they're going through this path along the gates, through the gates. But in this picture, I wanted to show not only the pathway through the gates, but also in between the gates, looking outside and seeing the pathway from outside. So this view is both inside the path within the gates and outside the path looking at the path. So it's both inside and outside at the same time. So I think this is a liminal space. Now this is during a very transitory time each year in spring, during those 2 or 3 weeks when the cherry blossoms are in full bloom. And so here we see a weeping cherry blossom tree. And most people, a lot of people take pictures of the cherry blossom trees during this time. But for this picture, I wanted to, instead of looking at the cherry blossom tree from outside, I wanted to go to the transitional space between outside the tree and inside the tree's own space, inside its canopy. And so you can see that you're in this transitional space. On the sides, you can see the entrance to the space, where you're just entering the tree's space. And then you can see inside the space of the tree, inside the tree's canopy. And then from inside, you can look outside and see the space beyond. So I think this is a liminal space. So this is a sculpture, a modern sculpture in a sculpture garden on a beach. And this sculpture itself has an inside and an outside. So it's dividing the space between inside the sculpture and outside the sculpture. But the sculpture itself is like this gauze that is punctured with holes going through it. And so you can see not only the sculpture, but you can also see the beach behind and through the sculpture. And if you look to the sides, you can also see that really this is a view of the beach within which the sculpture is situated. So I think this is a liminal space. So this is showing a wall around a house that is bounded by two streets. And this particular view is looking down both streets simultaneously. So it is on the one street and it's also on the other street. And so it's not really solely on either street, but it's on both. And at that razor's edge between the two streets at the corner, we see a small Buddhist shrine. And that shrine has the symbol below it of eternal cycles, which is this ancient couple thousand-year-old symbol from Buddhism of the swastika. It's the opposite direction of the swastika that we all dislike. But this is the ancient one of the eternal cycles. And in this image, we see the meeting of the outside world, the secular world of the street, and the inside world and the religious world of the Buddhist shrine. And interestingly, this Buddhist shrine is made for the public to enjoy by the person who lives inside the fence. So I think that this is a really, really liminal space. So this shows a fence that is dividing a suburban neighborhood and a rice paddy. And the fence itself is it's kind of almost gossamer. It's almost invisible. It's so thin, made up of these plastic wires that just barely create that division between the suburban city space and the farm space. And if you look through the framing created by the threads of the plastic wire that create the fence, you see the reflection of the suburban homes on the water of the rice paddy. So I think that this is also a very liminal space. And so I just want to end by asking you, what kinds of liminal spaces can you find? And with that, I will now pass the baton to Jonalu.
Les has shown us some liminal spaces, thresholds of a type, places in between. Of all the thresholds that we traverse, from our doorways and hallways to the moments of life that take us from one state to the next, those rites of passage, graduations, marriage, children, retirement. Few of those are truly universal. There's usually someone who hasn't experienced any particular transition and maybe never will. But the very first threshold of our lives is absolutely universal, something that every one of us shares: birth. All human beings, rich or poor, old or young, healthy or sickly, of whatever race, gender, nation, or sexuality, were born. Everyone ever born on this earth was born of a mother. Our genes all go back, if not to Eve, then perhaps to Lucy or one of her early sisters or cousins. So far, even those who were mixed in test tubes grew in a woman's body and were born. No matter what happened afterwards, at least in that moment, each baby, each new person had a mother, and perhaps that accounts for the popularity of Mother's Day. Even more of what accounts for Mother's Day's widespread esteem, though, is that all who survived infancy were cared for, at least to some degree. Humans are incredibly vulnerable creatures when we're born, completely unable to survive on our own. Birth reminds us of our mortality and our ultimate dependence nearly as strongly as death does. As infants, we human beings require care, physical care, feeding and protection from predators and other threats, and emotional care, holding, cuddling. Without care, we would not have survived. So we are thankful for those thresholds we all crossed. The threshold of being born, the threshold of being cared for. And we're thankful for those who have cared for us. Sometime after birth, or maybe at birth, we came into a home. Home is more than a place to be. Home is a place of family, a place ideally of caring and being cared for, a place where we are protected and defended, held and helped, a place where we can be vulnerable enough to grow and safe enough to be ourselves fully. And whenever I say things like that about home, I have to also acknowledge that home is not that for some people. In these days of coronavirus, when we're only starting to tiptoe out away from our homes again, I have to name some of the problems that are encountered in homes. I can't help but think in these recent times about the people living alone. Living alone itself is not a problem. Isolation, though, is. And the increase of people living alone is a symptom of isolation. There's no doubt that isolation is on the increase in our culture. Fewer people have close friends in whom to confide, or familiar or social networks on which to rely, and that increases our reliance on social institutions that may not have the ability to address our needs in the personal way that, well, persons would. Yet the number one response for the time that we're in is physical distancing, increasing isolation. And that creates some emotional conflicts, especially on days like today that are supposed to be family celebrations. And in these times, everyone, no matter their age, is a little concerned about having someone who can take care of them if they get sick. Yeah, we're trying to stay away. As someone posted on Twitter, adults can't visit their parents, parents can't visit their adult children, and if they could, they couldn't even embrace each other. I don't know how many, but some of us hugged our loved ones for the last time, and we don't know it yet. I'd add that that's always true. It's always true that someone has hugged their loved one for the last time and doesn't know it. And yet it is particularly poignant in these times. At the same time, though, we have a trend contrary to isolation, that of young people returning to their family home. They've already crossed the threshold, leaving home behind for college or jobs or even their own families, and ended up retreating once more back to their parents' home when they lost their job or their spouse or went back to school, made some transition, crossed some threshold, and needed safety and security again. And heaven knows I'm not critical of that. I moved back into my parents' house at least twice before they got smart and moved halfway across the country where it would be harder for me to retreat. And I really feel for those like former foster kids who have no family home to fall back on. Still, as college students move back home over the last couple months, many have felt they've sacrificed newly forming identities and independence. And with the virus, even many folks in their 20s and 30s have come back to their parents' places. We're craving familiarity and comfort, symbolized by going home. So many thresholds being crossed and recrossed. Plus, we know that economic uncertainty often leads to increased sharing of spaces, so these consolidated households may continue to increase. And we all know as we add in more people, there's also more potential for conflict. Parents of young children have encountered this. You're not used to being together all the time. Whether it's arguing over the overuse of the Wi-Fi, the chores, schoolwork, or getting more personal space, nerves have frayed. And then there are even more serious situations, people who feel unsafe inside their own homes. We all have some sense of the toll that may be taken by domestic violence and child abuse, often braided together with alcohol or drug abuse. And all these problems have such potential for exacerbation now. Some have called it a crisis within a crisis. As we approach a gradually reopening society, we keep in mind the different circumstances from which we re-enter. Those who feel lonely or crowded or threatened may be among those most eager to cross the threshold of their home. Those who feel safe and secure there, who have support without interference, may be more reluctant even with economic imperatives to get out. Family has protected and nurtured us, taught us about the world, and acclimated us to our culture. Family taught us how things are supposed to be. If reason prevails in our family, we grow up seeking logical connections. If kindness dominates, we accept that as a value. If argument permeates the atmosphere, we'll tend to see fighting as ordinary and routine. Whatever we grew up with feels normal, even if later we find out it isn't. So as we grow up, we find ourselves more and more in that liminal space. And one of the things that it strikes me that requires is decisions. Remembering Les's slides where he had the bamboo and you have to make a choice about which direction to go around the bamboo, which direction to go through the bamboo. Even in those liminal spaces, even in crossing those thresholds where it's presented as yes, no choices, it's much more. These threshold places, these liminal places are turning points that could have gone any number of directions, left, right, up, down, diagonally. And each one carries a potency in our lives. Each one made other choices less possible or more possible. Take graduation, for example. Many people this month are sad for the loss of ceremonies to mark that achievement. Yet graduation, as a threshold, symbolizes a plethora of choices, college or not, which college or which job, which major or which employer, where to live, on and on. While we have nothing to say about that first universal threshold we crossed, birth, the later ones bring more options, more choice points, and more complexity. And all these thresholds contain not only a swirl of decisions, but a swirl of emotions that inform one another. Longtime cancer survivor Caitlin Flanagan wrote in a recent piece in The Atlantic about how she tracked her survival by graduations. After being diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, she had been afraid she wouldn't make it to her children's kindergarten graduations. And now she's made it through their high school graduations. Still, with a recurrence, she doesn't know if she'll make their college graduations. The thresholds that we have in our personal lives often intersect with the thresholds of other family members. Parents celebrate their children's milestones and children their parents, and it does make a change. Birth and death create generational shifts, shared occasions with different meanings for different family members, all filled with swirling emotions and decisions. How can we put it all together and make sense of it? The late UU minister Gordon McKeeman compares cobbling our lives together to making leftovers out of what's in the refrigerator. To make a leftover dinner, he writes, the first thing you need to do is open the refrigerator door. You'll see an assortment of things, containers, jars, bags, boxes, and things wrapped in foil, wax paper, or plastic. Now I invite you to open a different door, he says, the door of your past. What you find there will be leftovers too. You will probably find your family's voices, their admonitions, perhaps their praise, maybe their blame, their warnings, some expressions of their love, their anxiety. You may find traces of their uncertainties, problems, and hopes. You will rediscover some decisions you've made without thorough understanding of the consequences, about leaving home or not leaving, about when you decided to be married or not to be, or both, or to whom. You will probably remember some of the jobs you took, some of the jobs you wanted but didn't get, and some of the ones you thought about and turned down. You will also find some circumstances, accidents, diseases, and the times you were born into and lived through. You will find your family and some of its ways, its heritage, its customs, the habits that were funny or odd and are somehow deeply ingrained and make other ways seem even odder than your own. You will find people who touched your life in 1,000 unaccounted and unexpected ways, who were there at special moments and changed you or made you a gift of a smooth stone, a happy day, or an unforgettable experience. And there will be all the ruins, sorrows, guilts, regrets, along with the fears and hopes, dreams and doubts, forgivings and forbiddings. Don't we have crowded refrigerators? Every one of us, such a collection of leftovers. So as McCammon says, each of our refrigerators is different. Each has a unique combination of leftovers. We do share some of the same ingredients, though, and some of us have been rattling around in one another's refrigerators, loaning and borrowing ingredients. Our paths have intersected. We've made some of the same transitions, crossed some of the same transitions, even shared some of the same thresholds. Some take us away from home and family into a new world. Some bring us to home and family. And we never create it from scratch, though. We're always bringing the ingredients from the family refrigerator. The specifics vary, but the cycle of birth, growth, aging, and death, the many thresholds of our lives, joins us to all other humans who have wandered across the century and who will wander in time to come. In these times, when we begin to cross the thresholds of our homes a bit more often, may we also take time to consider the decisions that come to us, that we make them consistent with our values, holding in love and care ourselves and all those affected by how we live and move in the world. And on this day, happy Mother's Day to all to whom that applies, and to all who have been born of a mother. May the thresholds you encounter lead to more clarity and more love each and every day. Whatever form your family takes, whoever you count as family or as friends, whether close or distant, literally or figuratively, I wish for you the blessings of connection and intimacy, someone with a shoulder to lean on, a hand to hold, a confidence to share. May you fully experience the miracle of love, both given and received. So may it be for us all. Our closing hymn is number 168, One More Step.
One more step, we will take one more step, till there is peace for us. Everyone will take one more step. One more word, we will say one more word, till every word is heard, and everyone will say one more word. One more prayer, we will say one more prayer, till every prayer is shared by everyone will say one more prayer. One more song, we will sing one more song, till every song is sung by everyone will sing one more song.
I leave you with words from Reverend Rick Hoyt. And when you have been away long enough, far enough, done what you'd set off to do, come back. Come back to the one universal everywhere and every when and everyone, this beloved community of all creation that you can never really leave. May we all be blessed in the coming days, and may our lives be a blessing to others. Our service is concluded, but I invite you, if you wish, to stay for our coffee hour and visiting. We will, in just a couple minutes, split up into small groups. That's the opportunity, for those of you who don't want to do that, to depart. And we wish a good week to you all. And if you'd like to stay, we'll be splitting up into those small groups for visiting.